Okay, guys, so this is the first version of the Burning Desire podcast. I introduced it yesterday, and today we have Francis joining us as well. Francis just literally randomly knocked on the door whilst I was looking to film this, and has got an interesting little story or two to tell, I'm sure. And it really emphasises the whole point of the podcast, which is to show quote-unquote normal people that you can do it too. You don't have to be Richard Branson to be successful. You don't have to be Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. There's lots of other ways to be successful, and hopefully Francis can share one or two of his stories today. So Francis, you were telling me, which is really fascinating to me, given that Allergy is my business and hopefully will be a $1 trillion startup. You've been on the management team of 2 unicorns. Can you explain to the people watching what a unicorn is?
Yeah, it's a company that has an official valuation, so somebody's actually is willing to put in funding based on that number. It doesn't tend to be initially. It doesn't tend to be. You probably have to go through 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rounds of funding before you get to unicorn status. But once somebody's willing to put money on the table into your business based on a valuation of $1 billion or more, is the unicorn number basically. So if I want to buy 10% of your business for $100 million, you would be a unicorn, because that's officially valuing the whole business at $1 billion.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But it's always good to get someone of insight.
Yeah, and all these terms are bandied around, and sometimes it's a good idea with a lot, and it's a good idea to stop in any situation. Like if someone's throwing in acronyms, or just say, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Francis. And I think too often in business and life, we just let things sail over our heads and pretend we know what we're talking about, and then we actually don't.
Yeah, and I'll give you a good example. I came to London about 20 years ago, and my first job in London was with a Japanese bank.
Okay.
And I remember, I hadn't worked in an investment bank. It was very daunting. Lots of new terminology. I hadn't worked with any of these products before. And you soon figured out, when you went to speak to people about, they call them desks, which is like a department. So you went to a guy's desk, he had 5 people here and 5 people somewhere else, but that was his sort of business unit. The people who talked most in terms of technical terms, most of the time were the people who didn't actually understand.
Yeah.
They sort of understood their own business. But if you can't explain something in a sentence or two, quite frankly, a lot of the time you don't understand it yourself.
That's great.
And it's a brilliant lesson to learn as well in terms of marketing, because at the end of the day, if you're trying to market something, you're doing it in a line or two. Do people get what you are? Because sometimes the other thing that's interesting, moving across sort of funding ideas, the elevator pitch is just a slight step more from that.
Yeah.
Can you explain in 30 seconds what you do, where the position, what the business is? So
have you heard Richard Branson, who's a great kind of icon for me, is a sort of person that I wish to be at some point in time, and hopefully will be. He actually has on Eccott Island a lift that he calls the elevator, because it takes, I believe, now Richard can tell me right or wrong, it takes 30 seconds for the lift to go to where it's supposed to be, and you can get a lift with Richard Branson, and you get the time it takes to lift, to close and open, to be able to discuss your business idea.
Yeah.
So apparently he's taken it to another level, which you'd expect is Richard Branson.
Yeah, I tried to do some funding for somebody once. There's a few interesting tips with people like Richard Branson, curiously enough. Everybody who's successful in business, very, very few of them are recluses. They're recluses up to a point, they don't really want to interact too much with the public. As much as anything else, their kids are in danger because kidnapping and stuff like this.
Okay.
A lot of them have private security and this sort of stuff, but they all appear at events sometime. And if you can sit in the front first row or two of an event, you can do what journalists sometimes call doorstepping people, which is literally, as soon as the event finishes, they don't they don't hang around. The more successful they are, the less likely they are to hang around for the networking.
Yes.
But he has to walk off that stage.
Yeah, sure.
If it's a major event, there's probably a backstage area, and you move to there. But like 90% of the time, these people are accessible in a public forum, and you just got to get up off your chair. And then you're right, the 30 seconds thing kicks in.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you can sit there all excited, blah, blah, blah. But if you blow that first 10, 15 seconds, he or she is going to be thinking
Fuming
like,
almost.
well, no,
Yeah.
they can see other people want to talk. They want to get out there. They have other things to do with their day. From the minute you blow that 10, 15 second thing, 30 second thing,
Yeah.
it's like, how do I get rid of this person, frankly?
That's a doorstepping. I never heard the term, but there you go.
It's actually
Good.
my own term, but I mean, it comes where the term comes from. I think is journalists at the weekend, if they want to, if there's something big blowing up in politics, they go to somebody's house
and
they
literally stand on the doorstep.
They
or wait
literally stand on it. It's a public pavement a lot of the time, especially down in London.
Brilliant.
Hardly anyone can afford a garden.
But this is the point of this podcast, because that tip there could change someone's life. I mean, I remember coming off. I've done with The Apprentice quite a lot of talks and different things. And one thing I think it's again a Richard Branson thing, and Richard Branson will be a lot in this podcast because I'm a very big fan of his. One thing I think he said was, don't go for A-list or B-list celebrities, go for C-list. And the same in the business world. There's people out there that are, you know, big investors, but they're not headline names. They're the ones that people out there can go and speak to. You know, drop them an email, drop them a tweet. There's loads of ways. And, you know, in America, there's this persistence pays thing, where almost be a pest, be a bee in their backside till a point in time which they go, you know what, I'll give this guy 5 minutes of my time, or a minute, or a phone call, or whatever. That's the American approach. I don't know what your view is on that. Do you think there's a level of you can overdo it with trying to get into contact with someone, or is there never a point where you go, we know enough's enough, let's go for someone else?
Well, having worked for 2 companies that ended up as unicorns, like you mentioned boards when we first met, like I wasn't experienced enough, I wasn't contact laden enough, I didn't have enough strategic value to put me on the boards of those companies. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't realise that till 5 years later, because I spent, as people do in corporate offices, out there fuming, thinking, like, you know, why am I getting the next step up?
Yeah.
And you do at that stage of anything, when you want to get to the next stage, you can pester people. Now, in terms of the investment community, be careful that you don't overdo it, I'd say, firstly. But also, you don't realise sometimes how naive you are till you look back. So I think it's a very good idea to make a bit of contact. See if you can get the person to reply. That's a good sign. But when you want to really get something from somebody, make sure you're equipped with the right documents, the right pitch. Don't burn a contact. You know, I'd say you don't realise that if you're contacting someone and you don't need them for funding until 5 funding rounds down the line, they'll remember you for having been a pest, or they'll remember you for having just got in contact. So, and they're not disappointed in a way, because everyone likes attention.
Okay.
But, you know, try and be as mannerly as you can. And actually, if you see what they're doing, try and send them something relevant to what they're
That's a good
doing.
point.
Or if they're like, you know, because they all crave media attention, like, just send them like, I really liked your ads, you know,
Yeah.
I think it was good for this reason, and leave it.
That's good.
And like, you could do that every like 3 or 4 months. But yeah, I'd say try not to burn contacts.
Okay.
But enthusiasm's not a bad thing.
Francis, thank you very much. Can you tell us the companies you work for, what you did there, or is that kind of a bit closed door?
No. At Egg, we launched about 5 or 6 financial products. It's a story in its own right. But I'll briefly tell the story.
Please.
We had the aim was to have 50,000 customers in the first year.
Okay.
They offered this. Initially in businesses, sometimes you have to buy customers, you have to get the funding, and sometimes you have to pay more for marketing than they're actually the revenue initially. So in financial services, it's slightly technical, but they offered a deposit account when interest rates were higher. Okay. I'm showing myself to be a bit of an old fart with this one.
No.
Interest rates at the time were 5%. So
Wow.
they offered Bank of England rates were 5%.
Okay.
So that's the wholesale rate.
Yes.
They were offering a rate of 5.5-6%. Which firstly got them to number 1 in the tables at the back of the Sunday newspapers in terms of best place to put your money.
See.
And secondly, you just couldn't get that rate anywhere else, because they were selling at a better than wholesale interest rate.
Okay.
250,000 people signed up for that offer in 1 to 2 months. That's
Wow.
250,000 customers.
Wow.
However, at that point, you're losing just
Lots of money.
1% on everyone's deposit, because you're
paying out more than
you're paying us 6%. The best rate you can get with that money, even if you redeposit it somewhere wholesale, is 5%. So every customer's costing you 1% from the get-go, and they were all losing customers therefore. So they had to create a loan account, a mortgage, a credit card, a fund supermarket, and I worked with the business managers to extract all the numbers to build a financial model to constantly sort of figure out how we could make money from all this.
Okay.
And then reported all that through to the board in a monthly pack.
Okay, and then your second, because obviously I've heard people, you said yourself, it was quite a nice claim, your hook, was that you're the only person in the UK to have worked on 2 management teams for $2 billion startups. So Egg was one in the financial sector, and what was the second one?
Vitality, who are now the second biggest health insurance company in the UK.
Wow. Who's the first? Is it Bupa?
Bupa number one. Yeah, and PPP might be third. Yeah. Interesting story too. They were a South African company who are successful in private healthcare called Discovery approached Prudential saying, we know health insurance, you know insurance and the UK market, let's do a JV. And eventually the South African...
JV, sorry for the...
Joint venture, yes. Fair shout, Charles. No terminology. They're joint venture. So yeah, I mean they both put in equity. They both had complementary skill sets or knowledge bases, and then eventually Prudential had a look at it and said, well, maybe we don't want to be involved with this. So they slowly cut down their equity stake, and eventually Discovery took it over, and Vitality is their sort of loyalty scheme, their point scheme, so they've called it Vitality. So now they have the naming rights to Bournemouth's football stadium, for example, and you see a lot of their ads at sports events. So Jessica Ennis, the ads with the puppy dog.
It's a brilliant marketing play, and they do things where they're the only, I believe, health insurance in the UK that actually really care about health insurance and the health of the people that work that are actually within there.
Yeah.
So they give they'll give you an Apple Watch for a very reasonable rate to prove that you're healthier, and the healthier you are, you get a discount, and the unhealthy you are, you don't get a discount. So they're promoting you to be healthier, and that's what I love about them. I actually personally am with Vitality as well.
Oh, wow.
Because I just looked at the model and the way that they're doing things, and it looks like they actually care. Whereas I find with some other, not to mention them, but other companies, they're just we'll take your money and then we'll struggle to pay you out when the time comes. Whereas Vitality, it seems to be they're trying to help you. The healthier you are, the less money they have to pay. It's very simple.
Yes, I mean it's a new business model. I mean, I look at things. I've developed more skill sets, but initially I looked at things from a finance perspective and a numbers perspective, and it's they probably have figured out that it's cheaper to promote health because it's less, as you say, less claims to pay out. Plus, it's very good for brand because you're bang on your brand. You know, you're trying to promote a healthy lifestyle. They started off with Fitbits. I didn't know they'd gone through to
Apple Watch now,
Watches. Yeah.
So I think you pay an Apple Watch nowadays is what, £400-500. I think with Vitality you pay $99 up front, and then it's something like £7 or £8 a month, and then it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So they're basically giving you an Apple Watch for very little, because the Apple Watch gives them the sleep patterns. It's got an ERG or ECG or something scanner on it. So all of a sudden they've got all this data which feeds into your app, and it shows you, and they've got different stepping stones which show you if you're healthy, if you sleep better, if you don't smoke, you get a discount, and at the end of the year you get a kickback. I think up to like 3 or 5%. Don't quote me. Check the website out for it. Neither of us are.
This isn't an ad. No. It was Pru Health I worked for at the time. So I'm not saying I sat on the board of Vitality, but yeah, no. It's a great product, and you know. They had to be with a new business. You have to be innovative. You have to look at the again, this is a formal term. The dynamics of the industry. You have to look at how you can change them.
Yeah.
There's a word I'm thinking of that I can't think of at the moment.
Paradigm shift.
Paradigm. Exactly. How did you guess that? That's weird. It's almost telepathic. Yeah. A paradigm shift. And again, to use the Apple example, when Nokia 20 years ago were the first ones to come out with literally a phone you could put in your pocket.
Icelandic company. I think Icelandic used to be. Was it Swedish? They're definitely in the
Near
Scandinavian.
Finnish.
Finnish.
Yeah.
There we go. We got them in the end.
They were, believe it or not, they were I believe, a paper manufacturer.
Well, I heard tractors or something. It's something very nothing to do with the phones. Let's just put it that way.
The story fit together. I'll explain
Okay.
why the story fit together in a minute. But in terms of the paradigm shift, yeah, I mean, you know, everybody's doing it this way, but it doesn't have to be done that
Correct.
way. And sometimes, you know, it is the new entrance to a market, and it's good for brand too if you show the consumer, look, you know, your current provider has been your current. You know, you're fighting for customers has been sort of not taking you for a ride, but they haven't really been thinking through what you really need. You know, and you just go along with this because it might be a product that you really need or a service that you really need. It's happened a lot in insurance.
I think that's why you look at Amazon and you think, oh, Airbnb or Uber, and you go, everything they're doing is so simple. You know, I with my allergy business, not to tout it too hard on this because that's not the point of this podcast. But when I created Allergy, which is the leading, you know, menu, personalised, tailored menu for every consumer on the planet, any restaurant you go into, I created it out of necessity for me because I was going around restaurants and I'm gluten intolerant and lactose intolerant. So I'm not allergic to either, which is very fortuitous, so it's not going to kill me, but it's not very good for me. Now, the problem is you go to many restaurants, and some restaurants have it written out handwritten, some have it on a big pamphlet, some have it. You see everywhere you go now, you know, if you've got food allergies, ask me. You ask the waitress, turns out they're new to the job, they don't know what they're doing, the manager has to take the order in Nando's, for example. Nando's give you a whole bump of this to look through, and it's just uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable experience if you're on a date, if you're in business, or if you're just trying to get something to eat. It's so uncomfortable. So I'm like, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And that's all I created the business on. It was just my necessity. So I didn't create this business for any other reason, not to make money, not to do anything. But you know what I realised from the Press and Mondre case we were discussing prior to the podcast? If you can save just one life with this app, that's a phenomenal business I've created.
Well, if you think Pret a Manger, who should have had the right processes in place, frankly, and the right warnings, etc., like, 'cause they have the funding, they have the people, like, sometimes smaller businesses just don't have time to cover every aspect of health and safety. I mean, that's, you know, I'm not saying people shouldn't support smaller restaurants and businesses, but I mean, there's just so many other things to do, and everyone's got to bring in a living from what they're doing. But if Pret can get caught out by it, and you know they've done all right, you know, it's a bit of a brand knockback to get hit with something like that for sure. But yeah, I mean, if you can de-risk it in a way for people and make it simple, and you know, if you cover the risk off, you're saying you're hoping to launch your app for $9.99 a month. That's $9.99's worth of safety of mind, peace of mind for the business owner.
Absolutely. I actually worked previously. Look at my LinkedIn, you'll see all what I've done. I worked for Peninsula for 6 months, so I got involved with the health and safety. So Peninsula are the UK's leading health and safety and employment law provider for SMEs. So shouting them out as well. So Peter Doan, who owns Betfred as well. So that's how it all comes to be. And yeah, so it's a whole collection of experiences that led me to the point in which I've created Allergy. And Allergy is living and breathing of me, and it's now become much bigger than I ever thought possible. And that's how we have some links here, and we'll probably off camera have a discussion, I think. I think it's good to leave the conversation there, because I don't want these podcasts to overrun, and I want it to become interesting and to grip you and to not be too long.
Well, we could leave them with a few takeaways, pardon the pun. Yes.
Chinese or Indian?
Don't what? I'm not sure I can speak either language or the 50 languages both countries.
I was talking about the food takeaways.
Oh, the food takeaway, okay. No, don't be afraid to maybe challenge, you know,
the status quo.
The status quo, and you know, there's a long journey of learning in terms of an industry, and it's very easy to think because you have the idea, you have like the industry. You don't. So take your time, learn what needs to be learned, but you know, execute at pace, but be willing to challenge the industry and even the people you sit in front of in terms of having them explain things in simple ways to you.
Amazing. Francis, thank you so much for your time.
Charles, good luck with everything.
Cheers. Right, let's find out how to turn this bloody thing off now. It's in perfect frame. I'll just go get Angel because I've got no idea what to do. I'll just cut this down.
I'll step out of the way.
Excuse me. That was interesting, eh?
Yeah, no, it's good. Like, I mean, you know, you're good off the
I'm always off the bat. That's how I work. It's not that I don't plan. I just plan in my head, sort of thing. But that was cool. So what I'll do is I'll give you my card, and then in June when I'm actually interested in the business, it might be something you might be able to get a board seat. You know, finally.
Yeah, well, I'm back.
Getting funding and stuff all organised.
I'll catch up with you for a coffee if you like.
Great.
Like, I'm back up again
That'd be amazing.
for the Manchester Jazz Festival.